Ignore protocol just for a moment, because Dammit Liz has something. What's up?
Hi, I have an anonymous question
Oh, well, okay.
for Will that
The
I was...
owner of a green Toyota. The ocean.
Will, now I've heard from your various stories and other written works of how awesome your son Ryan actually is. But can you please describe in painful detail just how awesome he clearly is?
I think John Hodgman should answer that question.
This is an anonymous question? Just given to you by a random anonymous person?
Well,
I wonder if you would recognize the handwriting.
It's distinctly possible. It wasn't given to you by a shockingly handsome young man? A shockingly handsome young man who I told would really have a good time if he got himself out of bed early enough to come down here and experience this panel, but instead chose to stay up all night playing poker and is still asleep.
I'm sorry, Will, when did you get here?
I was told to arrive at 10 by Paul of Paul and Store.
No, I said if you want, arrive at 10. Most
That's
of
not
us
the
will
way.
arrive on time.
That's not the way
I said show up whenever if you're a douchebag.
You guys are really in nerds, miss.
I will describe in excruciating detail my favorite story about my son Ryan, who is actually super awesome. Ryan goes to college, and he goes to college out of state. And one of the hardest days of my life was the day that we drove him off to school. And I remember standing at the front door of my house. Anne, Ryan's brother Nolan, and Ryan were all outside in the car waiting for me. And I was standing at the front door with my hand on the doorknob. And I knew that when I opened the door, that was it. This was my last chance to somehow undo this and keep him a little boy in my house forever. And it was really hard for me. I stood there for a couple of minutes, really paralyzed, the way like a character in a novel does. And you think, wow, that's a great literary device, but this was real. And I opened the door and began to cry and closed the door and kept my back to the driveway and composed myself and walked up and took him off to school. And Ryan had been at school for, how long was he at school? 2 semesters? So Ryan was in school for 2 semesters, and he came home to visit, and I had just gotten this really cool thing from ThinkGeek that shoots these green laser fake stars all over whatever you aim it at. And I had set this thing up in my living room. So it was across the roof and down 2 walls, and it was really gorgeous. And I was laying on the floor, and I was watching these stars go around and do their thing. Ryan comes into the room and he lays down on the floor next to us, next to me. And we're the 2 of us are sitting there laying on the floor, and we're watching all of these fake stars go around, and it's really just kind of a lovely moment. And I have known Ryan and Nolan since they were 6 and 4, and have raised them for their entire lives. And although I've been their stepdad for that long, I never made that emotional kind of like separation. I never treated them as if they were, not mine. And Anne and I decided that we weren't going to have our more children because we already had children. And their biological dad did everything he could to get in the way of that. And in a really selfish and cruel and an awful way. And made our lives really hard for all of us for a really long time. And Ryan and I are lying on the floor of the living room watching this stuff, and Ryan leans over and he puts his head on my shoulder, and he was 19 or 20 at this time. And he put his head on my shoulder like he used to do when he was little, and we would go outside to watch meteor showers. And he said, so I've been thinking, you've been like my father to me my entire life, and I was wondering if you would like to adopt me.
Aww.
And it was the single greatest moment of my life. And I began to cry again, just like I did the day that I stood at the front door and didn't want to open it. And I told him yes. And it took a year, because in California, they don't want you to just go, do you want to adopt him? Yes. Do you want to be adopted? Yes. Great, it's done. No, they want you to fill out like 700 pages of paperwork. But since then, I have had the extreme pleasure of watching my son Ryan grow into a young man and see my influence in him. And I've been able to see him. He's so excited to be on this cruise because every single person on this stage he loves as much as I do. And Roderick's here too. And because it was requested that I do this in excruciating detail, I believe I have reached the point of excruciation. And although I sort of shake my fist and stomp my feet when I stupidly leave myself logged into Twitter and he goes to my Twitter account and tells the world how awesome he is, I secretly love it. And I love that he does that instead of, doing something like, hey, my name's Will and I'm a dick. So excruciating detail has been achieved. Anonymous questioner.